Hello and a very warm welcome to Engineered Unicorns, fantastic books for a magical lifestyle. My name is SandyJ and we are at Campus Radio Karlsruhe. Now for this episode of Engineered Unicorns, which is called Summer Shorts, I have an update for you. Naturally, the book recommendations and, last but not least, book release in October. And with that, we start with the update. So, in September, I read quite a lot of books again, which was surprising because I finished my Goodreads challenge again. And so I decided that I wouldn't need to push myself anymore to read a lot. But I ended up still finishing quite a lot of books, and I'm quite happy about it. A lot of them were manga, but I also had quite a few of scientific books and fiction. And I'm quite happy about it. It was a nice reading month. Also, it was nice because I went on my usual birthday trip. I went to Amsterdam this time and I went to a whole lot of bookstores and had my fun there to look for new books. I found quite a lot, and a lot of them I didn't even have on my list that I wanted them, so it was quite nice to explore the city, which is absolutely beautiful, and I quite enjoyed my time at the sea. I didn't enjoy the train ride so much because I had really bad luck with trains missing, and then I was there when the whole network of trains stopped in the Netherlands again for the second time this year. I had trouble getting back to Amsterdam. So that was quite a journey from that point of view. But overall, my time in Amsterdam was really lovely. It's a special city and I quite enjoyed it there. Not only for the book shops, but just to be there and to have different air, to enjoy a different city with a really good bike network. So I highly recommend Amsterdam. In any case, back to the books. I had in Amsterdam, because I had time on my hands and because it's a thing that I like to do, to go to coffee shops. I mean cafes as real coffee. I don't mean the other kind of coffee shop that you have in Amsterdam too. I like to go to cafes and just sit there and think about stuff and write and read. And so I had a nice coffee shop which was quite close to my hotel. And there I sat and not only enjoyed their music and their brilliant coffee and apple tarts, but I had also another insight, you could say. It seems to be that I have my insights mostly in coffee shops or on vacation. And this time around, my insight was that books and pens, pen as in writing pen, have something in common. And that is you need time to use them and to enjoy them, their use. The reason why this is so important to me and why this was such a revelation to me is that when it comes to my family, on my father's side of the family, we have this thing to really like pens and writing utensils. And I'm also guilty of that pleasure to have a lot of writing utensils. I do have a lot of pencils. I do have a lot of fine liners and stuff like this. And over the last few years, I tried to use them up and not buy any more pens. It's quite easy to get pens, but it's not as fast to use them up, which is also the same thing with books, that you can easily get books. You can go for book shopping very easily. You just get your hands on books, even with the shortage of paper and other stuff to produce them currently. It's certainly not that way that when you go to a bookstore that they are empty. So it's easy to get books in digital formats and over your library, especially when they have Libby now. You can easily get quite a lot of books, and same as with pens. But as we are progressively getting more into writing with our digital devices, we write less with pens and paper, and so we didn't use them up as easily. And I was really annoyed with this because I wanted to use up my pens. I didn't just want to throw them out because that would be wasteful. Still, it's taking quite a lot of time to use them up. And even with me journaling, even with them, I am having trouble to really get through those pens. And when I was younger, when I was studying and when I was in school, I had always the problem that I used up my pens so fast, or at least it seemed so fast to me. And now that I'm a grown-up, an engineer, I'm doing most of my work digitally. So even with my bullet journaling, which is just the reduced version, I'm not into all those really nice looking spreads. I mean, I like looking at them. I don't enjoy making them. I don't use that much pens. And so even with those fine liners, it takes me several weeks of writing relatively much to use them up. And those weeks feel very slow. And so this insight that I found in Amsterdam was quite interesting to me. So to enjoy and use your stuff, it takes time. It's much, much more time that you will have to use them for books and for pens. So with that, I'm at my book recommendations for you. The summer shorts, not as in wearing shorts, but as in short books that I read over the summer of this year. It's 3 books. 2 of them are actually non-fiction, and 1 is fantasy. And those books, all 3 of them were released in the last 2 years. So first we have Tempest on Connection, which was released last year, and which you can get the German version at the City Library of Karlsruhe. Then a fantasy book that I want to recommend to you is What Abigail Did That Summer by Ben Aronovich. It was released in 2021, earlier this year. And last but not least, which is fitting for me going to bookshops, is called 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops by Sean Bythell, which was released last year and which is the only book that you currently can't find at the Karlsruhe City Library. The other 2 books are available in the German versions at the City Library. Let's start with 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops by Sean Bythell. I just read the back flap for you. Sean Bythell bought the bookshop in Wigtown on 1st of November in 2001 and has been running it ever since with an increasing passion for the business, matched only by a sense of despair for its future and an ill humor inspired by almost 2 decades of dealing with confused customers and early staff. His international best-selling books, The Diary of a Bookseller and Confessions of a Bookseller, have been translated in more than 20 languages, including Russian, Korean, and French. I have read one other book by him, and I do own The Diary of a Bookseller, which I haven't read yet. And he has quite a good sense of humor, and the bookshop in Wigtown, it's a second-hand bookshop, so the people you find in second-hand bookshops are a bit different, I think, than what you find in bookshops that are selling mainly new books. So this book, I found it when the bookshops reopened this year. All of those books I found browsing in bookstores, and I quite enjoy those small books because all of them are shorts. So the 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops is just 138 pages long. And he tried to put those people that come to his second-hand bookstore into a system which uses Geni. So the first genus is Peritus, the expert. Then there is the second genus, Familia Juvenis, young family. Then there is the occultist, the loiterer, the bearded pensioner, the not-so-silent traveler, and the family historian. Then there are bonus, and then there's also the staff of second bookshops, which are part of it. Funnily enough, I didn't really find myself in those pages. In any case, it's quite amusing to read his books, so I highly recommend it. I always wanted to go to that bookshop, but unfortunately Victorian is quite out of the way from Edinburgh, and which is easy enough to travel to from where I'm living. But when I want to go from Edinburgh to Victorian, if you use public transport, it's more than 6 hours. So I checked, and Victorian is quite famous because it's a lot of bookstores in that little town. So I really would like to go there. And they also do have a festival, and obviously it sounds as if you could have fun finding books there. So I personally recommend all of his books, and if you want to start out with a short one, then 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops might just be the book for you. It's 138 pages of fun. So another sort of fun, but fictional fun, is by Ben Aronovich, What Abigail Did That Summer. It's got around 200 pages. It's a standalone book, but it's part of a certain world which Ben Aronovich created. Let me also read the flap for you. Before becoming a best-selling author, Ben Aronovich was a screenwriter for Doctor Who. By the way, I recommend watching Doctor Who. And a bookseller at Waterstones. He now writes full-time, and every book in his Rivers of London series has been a Sunday Times top 10 bestseller. He is published in 14 languages and has sold more than 2 million copies around the world. Ben Aronovich is also a trustee on the board of City Read London and is a long-time supporter of Nigeria's premier arts and cultural festival, the Archive Festival. He still lives in London, the city he likes to refer as the capital of the world. I don't agree with the capital of the world, but I quite like his books. The Rivers of London series is quite enjoyable, so I highly recommend this. And this is, you could say, a standalone. Abigail is a side character or a supporting character in the Rivers of London series, which is, by the way, completely available at the City Library and the American Library in Karlsruhe in German and in English. Their book is currently only available in the German version, and I think it was a audiobook version. Abigail is a young girl, and she's about, I think, 12 or something like that. And she is home for the summer, and she lives in London, and she has a lot of time on her hands in her summer, and she just goes out and meets different people, a boy and foxes who can talk and who are actually aspiring. So if you ever wanted to meet foxes who can talk and who are spies, then this is the book for you. It's really quite funny. And it's also, even though it says what Abigail did that summer, I think it would be a quite interesting read in this time now, if you like to read little scary books, but that still feel cozy, then this is quite a good autumn read too. And it's really enjoyable. And Abigail is a well-rounded character, and she's quite plucky. The whole story revolves around a park, Hampstead Heath. And there are the foxes who are spies. And then there's some stuff happening. And if you know the Rivers of London series, the Rivers of London are actually goddesses, which are part of those stories. So you do have quite a lot of magic in it. And she meets one of those rivers, and as I've said, foxes who are aspiring, as in James Bond. They even use a special kind of alphabet for their operations and all this kind of stuff. So it's really funny. And so I really enjoyed this book, and it's a fast read. It's good for this time of year too. Last but not least, I want to recommend to you Tempest on Connection. It's a book that I found in my favorite bookstore in Leipzig. And it's also hardcover. It's a really small book. It only has 130 pages. And as I've already read to you the descriptions of the authors by the other books, let me read this one too. Tempest is an award-winning Sunday Times best-selling author, poet, and recording artist. Tempest won the 2013 TED Youth Award, was nominated for the Costa Book Award and the Brit Award, has been shortlisted for the Mercury Prize twice, and nominated for 2 Ivor Novello Awards. They were also named a Next Generation Poet by the Poetry Book Society, a decennial accolade. They released their 4th studio album, The Book of Traps and Lessons, in 2019, produced by Rick Rubin. Tempest grew up in southeast London, where they still live. This book was quite a surprise to me for more than one reason. So I didn't know Tempest before. And they have written quite a lot of poetry. They have written also plays for theatre and some fiction. And they wrote this book mainly last year, and it was released in 2020. And it's having naturally chapters, and the chapters are from the entertainer's point of view, because you start out with setup, sound check, doors, support act, preparation, going out there, feeling it happen. Last but not least, notes and acknowledgements. It's a non-fiction book, and they wrote about their experiences as a poet and as a person. And so this book is certainly not an easy read, because they are talking about how society perceives people and treats them based on that, what they see. And so this is definitely an interesting read, and it opened my eyes to quite a lot of stuff. The chapter that resonated the most with me was preparation, because they talked about a lot of different things in that, how the world perceives you, how social media is changing the world, and how a lot of people put their worth, their self-worth on there, and how you are actually performing on social media, and that you need to take time off. If you are on social media, you are essentially on stage, but you need to leave the stage too to be yourself. And I annotated quite a few passages. So one of the passages regarding the self-worth and the way we are showing ourselves to the world, and how that social media influences ourselves by liking our posts or by downloading our podcast or watching our shows, is part of this book. And one of those short passages I want to read to you. Problem is, I left my creative compass to rust while I navigated life by other people's standards. And now, when I really need it, it's stuck and I don't know which way to go. So essentially, for me, this meant you need to unwind and to take a step back from social media, but the society thinks, and to find my own way, to not be pulled into the stream of consciousness. And I read this book at the end of August and the start of September. And this was a time for me where I also thought a lot about my podcast. And this was also a reminder regarding that I need to find my own way in this world. You may remember that I was telling you in the last episode that I had this feeling I need to be more academic with my views, because I'm working at a research university and I'm an engineer, so I have a tendency to overload stuff. And then I was reminded by Café and her videos that it's about the joy. And so this book on connection, and especially this chapter preparation, really reminded me that I need to find my own way. And as much as I like the reviews and learning about narrative structure by a critical dragon, A.P. Canavan, or the discussions between A.P. Canavan and Philip Chase on YouTube, it doesn't mean that I need to do the same thing, that I need to have the same level of insights because I'm an engineer. They are trained in a completely different field. They are trained in English literature, and so it's a different point of view, but we don't have to be on the same layer. I think everyone has their own views, everyone brings in their own experiences, so we are naturally on different layers. And so this was a reminder that we need our own points of view and our own compass, and social media can distort it, and if you aren't careful, it can pull you in different directions, and it always does. And I also recognized that through the podcast, my reading shifted slightly, not as much as other creators noticed with their reading when they started a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that. In my case, it wasn't that much because I went in and said from the get-go, I don't want to bend to the trends or something like this. I nevertheless can't pull myself out of it completely. There is some change in my reading. There is some change in my book buying, but I think I stayed fairly independent. Nevertheless, there's influence. And before that, they say, how can I trust what anybody else stands for if I don't know what I myself am about? It's true that if people generally approve of what I'm saying, it is easier to believe that what I'm saying has worth. But when they stop approving, where will that leave me? Unable to ascertain whether or not what I have to say has any validity. I have to get a sense of my motives beyond the blinkered duality of the approval or disapproval. It doesn't define me. I was born fallible and I will die fallible, just like everyone else, no matter how much goes right or wrong in my life. I quite think there are a ton of profound thoughts that Tempest has here and written down. There's another part of preparation where they talk about writing in itself, and I found that those thoughts fit perfectly for podcasting too. I want to read to you this part, which I think puts a nice perspective on writing or anything creative. There is no success in writing. There are only better degrees of failure. To write is to fail. An idea is a perfect thing. It comes to the writer in a breathless dream. The writer holds this idea in their mind, in their body, everything feeds it. They have spent their entire lifetime up until that point honing the skills to get this idea out of the ether and down through their useless hands onto the page. But it will never be right. There is no way that a writer cannot conjure that idea as they wrestle with it. By the time it has revealed itself to be finished, when the deadline can't be put off any longer, the exhausted writer has learned another lesson about their own restrictions that they promise themselves they will overcome next time. But next time comes, and they are faced with new restrictions, new limitations, new impossibilities. Finishing work is what gives the artist the humility necessary to begin again. Many people have ideas. But to go through the agony of finishing that idea, realizing you are so ill-equipped that despite your burning conviction, your deep creativity, your relentless practice and your natural talent, you have still failed. You made a good go of it. The thing is out there, another step towards meaning. Next time, maybe you'll do it better. Or maybe you'll never do it again. So this book is very, very profound in quite a few parts of it. And I highly recommend it. You can get it, as I've said before, as a German version at Karlsruhe City Library. I think it's definitely worth a read, and it makes you think about how you create stuff, how you finish stuff. So I quite enjoyed Tempest on Connection. And I enjoyed the other books. So my book recommendations for you for this month are 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops by Sean Byfield, Ben Aronovich, What Abigail Did That Summer, and last but not least, Kate Tempest on Connection. Kate Tempest and Ben Aronovich you find at the Karlsruhe City Library. The book 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops, currently you don't find there. So last but not least, I want to give you a heads up. There will be coming out a ton of books next month, but I will only give you one hint, which is Shattered Midnight by Danielle Clayton, which will be released on October 5th. Danielle Clayton is a Black author. This book sounds quite interesting to me. And with that, we are at the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is SandyJ. You are listening to Campus Radio Karlsruhe. Music, as always, is by Erwin Schmidt, and you will find the show notes at Campus Radio Karlsruhe or on the platforms where you can find the podcast. We are now also on YouTube, so you can find some of the episodes there now. And yeah, see you soon.